The biggest problem with crypto and the adoption of crypto and payments is not volatility. The biggest problem is answering the question for people, but what can I do with it? It doesn't matter if it's USDC or Bitcoin or KIN or any other cryptocurrency. It's the issue in the entire industry that we need to solve is answering that question, but what can I do with it?
This episode is brought to you by Jito. Jito is the easiest way to start earning MEV rewards on Solana through liquid staking. Get your SOL, stake it with Jito, and get instant access to liquidity through their liquid staking token, Jito SOL. Get started today at jito.network/staking. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Lightspeed. Today, we are joined by Ted Livingston, the CEO of Code. Ted, welcome to the show.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Oh, yeah, we're pumped to have you. So anybody that doesn't know Code, it is the easiest way to pay anybody anywhere in the world. Usually when we do these interviews, we don't really go into anyone's background. It's like, the classic question, like, how did you get into crypto? It's not all that interesting. But Ted, your background is extremely interesting. So I want to go all the way back to 2009 when you started Kick and go into just that story and also, what you learned from building consumer products.
Yeah, totally. It's been a long journey. So I got really fortunate. I worked at BlackBerry in 2007, 2008, before the iPhone was announced. So I got to see mobile very early. I got to live in a world where me and all my friends who worked at BlackBerry, we all had BlackBerries with full data plans. So we really got to experience the future before everybody else. And sort of coming out of there, I was really excited about mobile. My boss said to me, "Hey, you're good at this. You should leave the company and start your own company." And at the time, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, maybe I can do that. I was still in college at the time. But I decided to go for it. And I looked around and it's like, hey, what is this BlackBerry thing missing? And I thought like the music experience actually was the worst part of it. Great email, great messaging, all these great things, but poor music. So we actually started with music, but then it got into, wait, wouldn't it be awesome if you could send tracks to your friends? And then I was like, wait, but I have friends on iPhone as well. And I want to chat about those tracks. And then we said, wait, we should just take out the music thing and launch a messenger. And so we launched that in October 2010, and it just went viral. Went 0 to 1 million users in 15 days, 1 million to 2 million users in 7 days. It was wild.
That has to be like one of the fastest growing apps ever, probably, right? I mean, 1 million users in a week is insane.
Yeah, it was insane. We were a team of, for the most part, a bunch of kids in our like mid 20s. We had our one, we called him our old guy, this guy, Peter, who was amazing. So he helped us like sort of, before AWS was really mainstream. We had to rent a private jet to get servers into the data center to scale. It was up, it was down. It was just totally wild.
Okay, so you had this insane growth. I think at the time you were obviously growing the company very quick as well. I think you got to like 50 employees, and at that time you actually raised at around $1 billion from Tencent in China, right? So you're just going full steam ahead. But when you're there, what is the business model of messaging? Because I would think like your competitors at the time are probably like iMessage. I don't think Telegram was around, but you have a few of those. Like I have no idea what their business model is. So what did you guys do?
Well, so maybe just before that, like it wasn't a straight path. We went 0 to 1 million users in 15 days, 1 million to 2 million users in 7 days. But then we got kicked off the BlackBerry platform because we were threatening BlackBerry Messenger. And we actually lost 99% of our users over the next 3 weeks.
Whoa.
Okay. So it was this sort of devastating moment. I think there's, my messaging journey, there's lots of parallels with crypto. When we got sued by the SEC, like that was also sort of a similar moment of what are we going to do about this? Mm-hmm. But we really focused on building a messenger that was based on usernames instead of phone numbers, let you connect across communities. You didn't need a phone number. And so built it back up, started to build developer platforms. And it was 5 years after our initial growth that Tencent invested $50 million at $1 billion valuation. So we like the curve is like up, down, and then the slow build back over many, many years. So it wasn't a straight path. It was quite the journey, and we don't have to get too much into that. But to your point, the big challenge then and today for chat apps is how do you make money? All the big chat apps left, whether it's Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp, Telegram, you name it, Signal, they're not profitable endeavors. They really rely on funding from some parent in the ecosystem, whether that's a company or donors or whatever it might be. And so that's really what got us into crypto is, could we build a new business model for messaging? Ultimately, we weren't successful, but where it led us, I think is super interesting.
Yeah, that's actually. I do want to talk about the segue into crypto, but just for like maybe a little tangent, I was actually at BlackBerry much later than Ted, but like Kick was actually kind of a legend there. Like people still kind of talked about like BBM and Kick in like those days. So it was a really successful app. So I just want to like people to understand the gravity of how like I remember people used to say like kick me like as like a play on words because like those were I used to actually have the app myself as well. So
Yeah, kick me.
super
What's your kick?
yeah.
Totally.
Ted, what was I think you mentioned it, but what was the key to the growth, like the features that the product had? Was it, I think you said you don't have to have a phone number. I think part of it is you could be anonymous in some ways as well because of that. And when I was learning about Kick, it's almost like that actually had some things in common with like crypto. And when I think about like, you don't have to have a number, it's almost like, oh, you don't have to have your own wallet. We'll actually spin it up for you. Something like that.
Yeah, totally. Like, I think the parallel with crypto is actually pretty strong and pretty interesting. The reason Kick took off is at the time, so it was the first chat app that was on iPhone, Android, and BlackBerry that had as good as experience as BlackBerry Messenger did for just BlackBerry users. That was the killer thing at the time. People love BBM, but they can't talk to their friends on iPhone and Android. We were the first app to be like, now you can. And the interesting thing, the thing that really set it apart is the people at BlackBerry and people in the industry broadly at the time thought it was impossible to build that quality of experience with the technology that was available at the time. And I feel it's like very similar with crypto today. People look at what we're doing with code and what we're building there, and what we have done with the technology with Solana and with crypto is in a way very similar parallel to what we did with the technology at BlackBerry and Android and iOS, 15 years ago at the time.
It's probably too early to jump into this, but just like high level, did you start with one operating system, like just iOS or just Android? Because again, there's a crypto parallel here where it's like, do you just focus on, say, Solana or build on Ethereum? I'm curious, like, did you think you had to cover all operating systems to actually have an app that would, grow as quickly as you did?
I think that's a great question. So at the time we started with just BlackBerry. Let's fix music on BlackBerry. And then, hey, wouldn't it be great if you could send tracks to your friends and chat about them? Hey, wait, I have a bunch of friends on iOS. Let's build a client there. Oh, wait, we don't have the licensing yet for the music. It's coming soon. Let's just pull in music for now and we'll just focus on chat. And then boom, that blew up and we never talked about music again. So definitely for Kick, that was probably the key thing actually that allowed it to take off. But I think crypto is different. You could look at it today and you say, oh, I have friends on Ethereum and I have friends on Solana and I have friends on, Bitcoin or whatever it might be. But really the truth is my friends, for the most part, aren't on any of those. My friends do not use crypto today. Mm-hmm. And so I think there's like a lot of tribalism in the industry today. The only user in crypto are the traders and the speculators. So let's build for them. And then that means we've got to cover all the chains because everybody's so religious about it. At Code, we don't think that way at all. The question we ask ourselves is, what is going to get our non-crypto friends and family actually using this technology?
That's a great way of putting it. And I think Code is probably one of the only apps I've ever seen in crypto that actually has that potential. And it's where the phrase "only possible on Solana" came from, by the way, as a fun fact. But we'll get to that. First, I want to maybe go back to the earlier days and fast forward to kind of how Code and Kin came to be. I know, Ted, you guys went through some iterations. Maybe you started on Ethereum, Stellar, and then finally on Solana. Can you kind of walk us through like what the story there is? Like, how did that all play out for you guys?
Yeah. So I think we were very early in the idea of trying to turn chat into one of these super apps. Actually, an interesting fact is Kick was the inspiration for WeChat. WeChat was born when they saw Kick go viral, the company Tencent in 2010. But when you look at WeChat, like so many of the things that make it powerful at the end of the interaction are money. I pay a merchant for something or they pay me or whatever it is. And in China, that works because you have one big financial system that, as long as you're in cooperation with the government, you can get full access to. Well, that does not work in the West. Every country is different, country by country. It's highly regulated. So if you want to provide this seamless super app experience, you will never succeed by trying to do it in the traditional system. You need something that does to fintech what chat apps did to SMS. Go over the top and make it global. And so I think that's why we were excited for crypto for a very long time, starting with Bitcoin in, I think it was like 2010, 2011 is when we first got interested in Bitcoin, because it felt like this first experience that we could go over the top with. And so as we're thinking about how to build this platform, to answer your question, Mert, like we're like, okay, we're going to need this financial layer. Crypto seemed like the only option, but it also seemed like it could also be a potential business model. You know, we were competing with a bunch of free apps that didn't make money and we're all funded from somewhere else. You know, anything we do and charge for users, our competitors will just copy and make it free. And so the idea of like a mining reward, but for developers, seemed like a pretty interesting idea.
Yeah, and I think you started with kin points, right? Which is kind of like a cryptocurrency, but it wasn't on a blockchain. It was almost like an experiment. Like, can we get a way to have a digital currency that people want to use? They actually want to hold on to and spend, because I feel like that was maybe one of your core theses. Is like, if we just have a currency, no one will care, but you need a reason why people hold it and spend it, right? So you started building like this economy within Kick. What were people using these kin points before you actually launched the kin blockchain?
Totally. So they were called Kick points. So they were, you know, built on a centralized database, and that was the exact question: can we build an economy inside a digital app around a new currency? You know, could people spend kin on one side to get stickers, and then on the other side earn kin for being a great moderator in a chat? And so we had lots of ideas around that, but the challenge was, from a regulatory point of view, if you want to do something like that, you have to make it a closed economy. So you might be able to earn something in Kick and then spend it in Kick, but you could never take it outside of Kick, because then it becomes money. And so that's really when we went from Kick points. We're like, wow, this is interesting. You know, could you build a new economy around a new currency inside these big digital apps? But then could you have it be sort of cross app, almost like a euro for a digital world, by putting it on the blockchain?
And then 2017, you launched Kin, right? Okay, which is more like the actual like cryptographic version of Kick points. And you started with Ethereum, but that was like really the only option, right? So then you went into Stellar, forked Stellar, and then how did the whole Solana conversation come to be?
So we are consumer app developers, right? Like, we want to build great experiences for users. And so for us, we simply need a technology that will enable us to build those experiences. So to your point, we started on Ethereum because that was the only option at the time, but it was clear, and we put this in the white paper, it was never going to work to scale. You know, just giving our active users 5 Kick points to get started would consume the entire capacity of the entire blockchain for 6 months. And that's still true today. Like that's not going to work. So, you know, there's lots of sort of tribalism in crypto, and how dare you leave Ethereum? And it was, honestly, it surprised us a little bit, because we're like, well, I thought we're here to build great experiences. It's like, no, we're here to tell the story of Ethereum. It's like, but I just want to build a great experience. So that's what did and has always driven us. And so that's where we went to Stellar. Stellar was the least bad option that could get us a little closer to having the technology we needed. You know, now instead of 10 transactions per second, it was 100 or 200. And the cost per transaction was much lower. But still, the cost was too high. And so we said, okay, well, what are all the options? It's one of our key values over the years. What are all the options? And we said, well, what if we fork Stellar, but put a new fee model in place? Then we could have the scalability of Stellar, but lower fees, again, getting us closer. But again, still not good enough. And so that's when we first heard about Solana, before even the testnet launched. We're like, this seems like, for the first time ever, we will actually have a technology that will be able to support mainstream consumer experiences, have the speed, have the cost, have the scalability. And so we actually announced migrating to Solana before any other project in the world. Right? Like, people are like, oh, Solana, I haven't even heard of that. That's probably the stupidest thing ever. Why would you ever migrate to something nobody's heard of? And because the technology is amazing. And like, looking back today, our conviction in Solana being the best layer 1 to build on, never mind layer 1, layer 2, the best infrastructure to build on, if we get away from the tribalistic terms for a second, is as strong as ever. It is amazing technology. And to me, anybody who's not building on it is more focused on the narratives and the speculators, and less focused on actually building great product experiences.
Amazing. That's an amazing soundbite there. So it's actually really interesting. You guys essentially went the backwards or the other way to what most people do, which is maybe they start an L1 and then they go with an app chain. You guys actually went from basically an app chain to an L1. So that's super, and you've actually had pretty good success with it as well. I would say Code is probably like one of the best applications in all of crypto, and we'll do a live demo here shortly as well. But I just want to maybe talk a bit about what that experience was like. Obviously, you guys were one of the first teams to move over, or actually the first. How was it been like building on Solana, like and kind of the development of Code, the product lifecycle, et cetera? Like, obviously, you built a massively successful company before an application in Kick, and now you have Code. Like, what are some parallels, the differences between developing in Web 2 and Web 3?
So I would say the biggest challenge is, and we saw this with mobile as well, right? When we built mobile, we were in a data center. When we were building chat, there was no AWS yet. And then when it did come, it wasn't working very well. And now today, it's like easy to build a chat. Anybody can do it. Feels very similar with blockchain. Like, oh, Ethereum's not going to work. Stellar's not going to work. Fork of Stellar's not going to work. Solana's not going to work. Solana by itself could not deliver the experience that we wanted to deliver, right? Solana is super fast. It's super cheap. It's very high scale, but you still have a ton of complexity. Like, oh, I submit the transaction. Oh, the transaction failed or didn't confirm. Or how many confirmations should we wait for? Like, there's still so much complexity in Solana. And so we actually ended up building a layer 2 on Solana. We didn't call it that at the time. We actually didn't know that at the time. But now when we compare what we built for Code, it looks exactly like what Coinbase is built for Base. It is a layer 2. We have a sequencer. There's a way to get your funds out of the smart contract with the sequencer. It's like very similar to Base in many ways. Whereas Base, they're trying to make Ethereum cheaper and higher scale. We don't need that. We already have the cheaper and higher scale Solana. What we need transactions to be also private and guaranteed. If I hand you a $5 bill, you have it, and then right away, Mert, you hand it to Garrett, and then Garrett hands it to Alice. And, we can't be like 8 seconds later, oh, sorry, that $5 bill, actually, that doesn't exist. All of you actually did not get that $5 bill. Like, we need it to be atomic. We need it to be physical. If I hand you $5, we need it to be guaranteed. So we actually ended up spending almost 2 years building a layer 2 on top of Solana to be able to deliver the experience that, we can look at, this digital paper cash experience.
Yeah, you tweeted a photo today, actually, that showed the layer 2 in the sequencer, because I was going to ask you about that. I've never heard of, people ask, why not build a layer 2 on Solana? And I think it depends on what a L2 is, right? There's like too many semantics there. It's like, is this L2 something that's like almost like an Ethereum L2 in that like you're still building towards the end state there and there's like validity proofs and fraud proofs, or is it just different than that?
There's a lot of things that are similar, and there's some things that are different. So we don't need fraud proofs, for example, because on Base, on an Ethereum L2, they're packaging all these transactions up into one transaction and then submitting that to the L1. They have to do that because it's very expensive to submit transactions to the L1. On Solana, it's very cheap. So the Code L2 does not package them up at all. It just submits them individually. So you can see them all individually. So you don't need these fraud proofs.
So it's like a pre-confirm. Well, it depends on the terminology, but in Ethereum land, it would be like you offer a pre-confirmation almost for anyone using the Kin network. Is that right? So it's like confirmed by Kin. And then if they really wanted to say, when is it on Solana? I don't know how long that would take, but it's every X seconds or whatever it is. You put that transaction there. Okay.
If we tried to do it on Solana, sort of just out of the box, I hand you a $5 bill, Garrett. We can't be like, oh, $5 bill. Yeah, you had the $5 bill, but just hold on for 10 seconds.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Actually, yes, you actually have the $5 bill. You can now give it to Mert. It's like, no, I hand you $5, and then you have to be able to hand it to Mert right away.
Yeah.
And so that's what our L2 does, is it creates those guarantees.
Yeah. And Mert knows way more about this than me, but I like a high level. I think it's like 400 milliseconds is a Solana block, right? But then within like 3 seconds, I think people usually say it's like final, but it's really 12 seconds until it's fully confirmed. And I probably have the definitions there off a little bit, but I can see what you guys are doing. Mert, do you want to step in there?
No, I mean, that's pretty much right. The block times are 400 milliseconds. The confirmation times to consider it finalized will depend on the provider. Like Circle with USDC uses 400 ms. People might use others. But no. So like one interesting fact is no confirmed block on Solana has ever not been finalized, like ever. So like 400 ms has been good. But I do want to actually, Ted, I want to show off, and sorry to the Spotify and Apple listeners, but I do want to show off the Code app actually, because it's truly like you mentioned the like a actual digital paper or digital cash experience, and it really does feel like that. It feels like you're actually working with physical cash in your hands, but it's on a phone. And so I'm gonna just I'm gonna attempt this. We'll see if it works. My lighting might not be great, but I'm gonna send Ted here one kin. So okay, I go to the
come
app.
on, one can, send me a
One
dollar.
kin.
One cat, which is like $0.
Yeah, $1 Canadian. Okay, actually, send me one can. Just
All right. So if we can do
so
this,
yeah, it's just like cash. I just point my phone at that, and then boom, I got the cash.
Yeah, so Mert just put up
Oh,
his
$2.
phone
That was
essentially to the
generous,
camera.
Mert.
You got to get on YouTube and watch this live because Mert just put his phone up to the screen.
Here, Mert, I'll give
And
it
then-
back to you, man. It's your cash. You take it back.
Ted's putting his phone up now, and they're just switching cash back and forth. It's absolutely insane. We'll make a social.
that
media
was
too.
crazy. Yeah.
Okay, so Ted, what's happening, Ted, at a high level? Like we kind of talked about code, but what is going on right now? What did
At a technical level, or what do you mean?
well, no, even high level, just like code. I said you can pay anyone anywhere in the world. That's like the slogan, but like what is kind of happening? Do you have a wallet that you just open that's an application? Like how does it work?
Yeah, so our goal is to make crypto like super simple and powerful for your everyday user. So yeah, if I want to hand you cash with code, you go download the app. It's super trivial to create an account. People just breeze through it. People my parents' age have no problem with creating an account on code, unlike any other wallet you would have them try to sign up for. And then it's just as simple as like I pull out a $5 bill, I show it to you, you point your camera at it in the code app and click, you have it. It's instant, it's private, it's guaranteed, and there are no fees. And because it is self-custodial, it's available to anybody, anywhere in the world.
Ted, I just have to say, no fees sounds too good. So what's the catch? How is it free?
Well, so, it's just like the Web 2 playbook, right? Like WhatsApp delivering a message to your phone is not free, but it is cheap enough that they can subsidize it and make money from other features down the road.
Gotcha.
And so that's a big part of why we use Solana and why only Solana works for us. I was talking to somebody about an ETH2 and they're saying, oh yeah, it's pretty good. It's 10 cents per transaction. And I was like, that's 1,000 times more expensive than Solana.
Yeah.
So like literally economically to deliver the code experience on any current Ethereum L2 would be impossible.
When y'all are exchanging cash like that, like we just showed, is it spinning up a wallet when you download the application? Like how does that work?
Yeah, we spin up a wallet for you. It's a pretty sophisticated system under the hood. You have sort of one master wallet, that's your 12 words, and then it spins up a bunch of wallets based on that. And then that's used to give you a level of privacy in the app. So if you were to go look at this on the blockchain, again, consumer needs drive technology requirements. What we don't want is somebody goes to pay something for Facebook Marketplace and, you pay them $5 and then they quickly look at the blockchain. Wait, this guy has $5,000 in his wallet. Yeah. So we need some level of obfuscation and privacy. So there's a whole bunch of things happening under the hood that really nobody in crypto, we think, has done or seen before. And that's okay, right? Like we're not building this to impress people on Twitter. We're building this to drive mainstream consumer experiences.
Hey everyone, quick break to tell you about Jito. Jito is the #1 liquid staking provider in Solana. Jito's been known for their MEV software, and now they're the fastest growing liquid staking provider in the Solana ecosystem. Solana DeFi summer is heating up, and what asset do you want to use in DeFi? Liquid staking tokens. Why? Because with Jito, you can take your SOL, stake it, and get instant access to liquidity through their liquid staking token, Jito Sol. You can then use Jito Sol throughout the Solana DeFi ecosystem while earning yields through MEV rewards and staking rewards with Jito. And Jito makes staking super simple. You can take your SOL, stake it, get instant liquidity, and start earning rewards all within 3 clicks. And not only do they make it simple, they make it secure. Jito has 7 audits, they have more than 1 million SOL staked, and they're one of the most respected teams in all of DeFi. Jito is for whales who need deep liquidity. It's also for people like me and you who just want to get started with liquid staking. You have your SOL, why not stake it, earn some yield, and start dabbling in Solana DeFi. So go get started today. Check them out at jito.network/staking. That's jito.network/staking. I'll put a link in the show notes. Use the link so they know that I sent you. And go get started today. So I know Mert and me definitely have some like product questions outside of just code, but I'm curious, one more like a little bit technical question is can you move? So this is Ken that's being passed between the wallets here. Can you move that to Solana, and like, could you use that in another DeFi protocol? And as part of that, I'm just curious how you think about liquidity, right? Because like with, I don't know if you call it a stable coin or what, but a big deal there is like, how do you maintain the value? Like, how do you keep the peg? Do you incentivize liquidity? So how does that work? Like, kind of kin the asset.
Totally. So maybe there's a few questions in there. So let's take them sort of one at a time. Maybe we'll start with just like why kin and what about stablecoins. I would say we started off maybe 4 or 5 months ago as we're starting to roll this out. Like, yeah, maybe one day we'll do a stablecoin, and maybe one day we will. But our hypothesis, and everything is odds, in the future. Like we look at all the options. The option where we end up adding a stablecoin cash transactions, like I just showed you, to code is going down. We are less and less convinced that stablecoins are the answer. Now, this is very contrarian. The problem with being contrarian is in the beginning, 95% of people disagree with you. And then it's 90%, and then it's 80%, and then it's 50%, and then it's 10%. Everybody says, yeah, we believe that all along. It's like, no, you didn't. So it is very contrarian. The reason I say it's going down is the biggest problem with crypto is not volatility. Okay. People say, oh, people don't use crypto for payments because it could go up or down. So you have to use a stablecoin. I'm like, okay, great. Have you tried paying your hairdresser with a stablecoin? Well, no, I haven't, but like theoretically I could. Well, you could right now. Do it. Like, why aren't you doing it? The biggest problem with crypto and the adoption of crypto and payments is not volatility. The biggest problem is answering the question for people, but what can I do with it? It doesn't matter if it's USDC or Bitcoin or KIN or any other cryptocurrency. It's the issue in the entire industry that we need to solve is answering that question, but what can I do with it? And today the answer to my hairdresser is, well, you could hold it, you could sell it, or you could give it to somebody else. And then my hairdresser is going to go, okay, could you just give me cash then? And so that's what we've seen with Code. Like Code has, version 1 of Code was this digital paper cash. Version 2 is what we call cash links, the ability to send cash as a link through any messaging app anywhere in the world. Neither of those have found product market fit because neither of those can answer the question, but what can I do with it? And this is the very exciting thing for us. We're now focused on version 3 of the Code app, which is around a micropayments platform for the web. We want to offer developers for the first time ever permissionless micropayments for the web. And the reason we're excited about this is for the first time ever, this feels like a use case that existing solutions cannot solve for. Right? Like when it comes to peer-to-peer, my hairdresser is going to say, can you just Venmo it to me? Like we all use Venmo, man. Like, could you just Venmo it to me? Like, why are you making this complicated for me? Just please, just Venmo me a tip if you want to give me a tip. But if I want to unlock something online, get into a group chat, if I want to get an AI generated image, if I want to participate in a game, if I want to unlock a piece of content, how could I do that if I want to just pay 25 cents? And, there's a lot of people who say, well, micropayments can't work. Micropayments don't work. And I'm like, how do you know? This is the contrarian side. How do you know? Like, I'd love to try it out. Can you show me where I can unlock an article for 25 cents or enter a chat for 50 cents or do any of these things? And people say, well, no, but, even if you could, it wouldn't work. It's like, how do you know? We've never seen that before. And so this is what we're focusing on, is making it super trivial for any developer in a completely permissionless way to charge anywhere from 5 to 100 cents on their website to users anywhere in the world. And what gets us excited is we think, it's one of these few use cases you can't do with Visa, you can't do with Venmo, you can't do with anything else, because just their cost structures don't allow it. And so that's what we're focused on next.
That's awesome. That's actually something that I would personally have a use for my company, being able to buy like individual credits to use infrastructure, like compute credits, because those are often quite cheap, and microtransactions just don't really make sense right now. But so that's awesome. One thing that I'm interested in is actually before that, we talked about kind of how code works under the hood a little bit. For people who are listening, parts of the code base actually are open source. So if you want to take a look, you can go and do that. There's some pretty interesting novel mechanisms like the time lock program that the guys at Code have developed there. So I would encourage you to check it out if you're a developer. But like it's on this contrarian topic, it's really interesting because you basically went from being contrarian, like first of all, building on Solana, that was contrarian. Then using you got criticized pretty heavily for using Kin instead of USDC. But then I actually thought everybody was kind of missing something there because it was so easy to onboard to the app with this Kin cryptocurrency because I didn't have to like on ramp through Coinbase or something. Tanner just sent me like $5 and I was just able to send it to anybody else. And it was just a much better product experience. And people always kind of forget this product side. And then now you're making another contrarian bet. So I guess like maybe a meta question is, how do you cultivate this sort of thinking? Because you seem to be quite good at it. Is it just the obsessive focus on the user experience, or like is it something else? Like how do you cultivate this?
It's a great question. I think at the end of the day, one of our best products that we've designed is our value system. So we have these 9 values. It's not like integrity, like stuff like that. These are sayings we use in the company. They fall under 3 different categories: smart, trustworthy, and get stuff done. And there's 3 sayings under each of those. And the first one under smart is look at all the options. And so I think like a lot of people are sort of, they're very quick to buy narratives, like the scaling trilemma, the blockchain scaling trilemma. It is impossible to have a blockchain that is fast, secure, and decentralized. Impossible. It's like, oh, really? I didn't see that in my physics textbook. Where can I find that? That's super interesting. And so we asked ourselves when we were looking at blockchains, like, well, we need it to be faster. So that's sort of requirement number 1. And that's what led us to Solana. And then the question is it secure enough? And is it decentralized enough? And for us, it felt like the answer was yes. So I think the way to cultivate is, internally, externally, we just always ask ourselves the question, what are all the options? You hear it all the time. Just another option, just another option. And to ask yourself, are you looking at all the options? Have you missed any options? And when you get these sort of contrarian options, are you sure that they're impossible? Or might you just be simply buying a convenient narrative from somebody else? The scaling trilemma is a convenient narrative from the Ethereum crowd. It is a convenient narrative. There's like, oh man, we made this thing super slow. How do we justify it? All I would have to ask is, so are you telling me Ethereum and all the L2s and everything to do with it in the future will not be any faster? Because you said it's a trilemma, right? Like you've already got decentralized, you've already got secure, so you can't get fast, right? That is a trilemma. Is that what we're saying? And so I think there's just so many narratives in the crypto industry that we've sort of just bought, hook, line, and sinker that should be questioned. And the question we always ask ourselves is, is that true? And how do we know that is actually true?
Yeah, I've heard Kevin, he's working on Monad. Said that one wrong. He talks about it as well. Is like you have cap theorem, which is almost like, I don't know if you want to say it's a scientific theory, but it's like accepted throughout the community. And then, Vitalik's obviously a genius in the space and one of the leaders, but I think he wrote the paper on the trilemma probably, I don't know what it was, let's say 5 years ago.
Blog post.
Blog post, but it's not something that's I don't know, been accepted for 20 years. So I agree with you that everyone is also just pushing the limit. Like anyone that said we're going to start off, with speed, maybe now there's like, okay, there's other ways we can decentralize. Anyone that's on the decentralization security, they're pushing to speed. So I agree with you, Ted, completely. I am curious.
Maybe can I just jump in for a second?
Yeah.
Just like on that, the way I test these things is somebody says, oh, Solana is not decentralized, will never be as decentralized as Ethereum. It's never going to be decentralized enough. The way I test that is like, okay, what would it take from Solana in your mind, for it to be decentralized enough? And I found that people do not have an answer to that. And if you don't have an answer to that to me is the proof point that it's a narrative, not an actual fact.
100%. And people always start a little bit on the extremes, and then like what gets accepted in reality kind of goes out. Like I'm from Arkansas. People are generally religious, and like Baptist is a big thing. And like Baptists can't dance, but guess what? Baptists do dance now for the most part. So it's just like things like that happen. Ted, but I am curious, like this is a very ambitious project you're working on, but it's also really cool. Like I've heard you say, it's one of the only things you can point to and be like, yeah, I could show my brother this. And he's actually like, that's cool. Whereas most things in crypto, people have no idea. But I'm curious how like timing comes into this. Because sometimes I'm like, maybe we are just early. Like, do you think this is the right time where people are going to start caring about products, or how do you think about timing in general when it comes to working on these type of products?
I think the question is, what are you optimizing for? Are you optimizing for the narrative, or are you optimizing for the user? And I think what we've seen in crypto so far is people optimize for narratives. And it makes sense, right? Because the best narratives lead to the highest token prices, lead to the best financial outcome for everybody in that tribe, right? Is it surprising that Bitcoin has the highest market cap and it was first, and Ethereum has the second highest market cap and it was second? Like, to me, that just points to the value of these things today is completely narrative driven, because that has never happened in any other economic race in history. The first web search is not the most valuable, and the second web search is not the second most valuable, et cetera, et cetera. Like, there's competition over time. So I think so far, crypto has largely been about narratives. And the reason for that is because the technology is extremely difficult to work with. That's one. And then two, even if it was really easy to work with, it's extremely difficult to build compelling consumer products. And so anybody who's actually trying to build those products, like we are at Code, it's like, well, you haven't done it yet. You haven't done it yet. You haven't done it yet. And it's like, how could you be so dumb? You should have been focused on the narratives, not the products. And so I think that's the thing that's coming here is like, well, the technology is getting to a point where we will be able to build these great products, and we are going to have enough team that one of these teams is going to deliver a great product. And then that is going to change the game. Once one of these products and one of these chains starts to really break out, the value of the narratives will evaporate. We're just not there yet.
That's very well put. And the point that you made about Bitcoin being first and having the most cap, and then Ethereum being second, having the second most cap, that's I never thought about that, but that's true. And then it's a really good realization that maybe we're actually paying attention to the narrative too much. But so while we're on that topic, I am curious about go-to-market, right? So there's maybe different schools of thoughts on this. Like as a crypto application, maybe you focus on the crypto native users first because that's a smaller market. Maybe it's faster feedback cycles, but those guys are generally narrative driven. And then there are people who are outside of crypto, but those are just very hard to get to because you have to make them understand what crypto is, or maybe you don't. How do you think about go-to-market? What do you think crypto's gotten wrong about go-to-market so far?
The challenge with go-to-market is you have to find a problem that enough people have that can be uniquely solved with crypto. This is the problem. Like, we as an industry haven't found a problem that we could uniquely solve. And even if we could, we deliver a solution that is way too complex for anybody to use. And so this is the path we've been on with Code, right? Like we said with Code, okay, let's make it so anybody could use it. And let's make it a simple, magical experience. I think we delivered on that. Anybody who's seen Code goes, wow, that is simple and magical. But it doesn't yet solve a problem. Why? Because people say, is like, I try to pay my friend back for dinner with Code. And he goes, wow, that was super cool. But what can I do with this? And then what does he say to me next time I'm trying to pay him back for dinner? He said, could you just send me cash? Because what can he do with it? It's like, well, he could hook it up to a new debit card that he signs up for and blah, blah, blah. It's like, he's not going to do that. Like, he's just never, ever going to do that. He already has solutions in place. So as an industry, we need to find a problem that users have that crypto can uniquely solve. And again, this is our next bet. Our first bet was digital paper cash. Our second bet was cash links. Our third bet is micropayments. And I would say we're excited about it because we have sort of the brand, the simplicity, and the technology that enabled digital paper cash. But now we feel we have a problem that only crypto can solve. And we think we can bring like a really slick user experience to that and a really simple developer experience to that. So any web developers out there, we'd love to give you an early look. We're looking for people to test this out, iterate with us, and build it with us. So definitely DM me on Twitter or Tanner or @GetCode. That's the big thing we're looking for right now. It's just web developers are like, There's no in-app purchase for web developers. There's no push notifications for web developers. Web developers have been at a massive disadvantage for many years. Can we change that? Can we finally equip web developers to have all the tools they need to actually be able to compete with native apps?
One thing that I find interesting here is you're very brutally honest, like with yourself and like your results. And you kind of just said, well, maybe it's not solving a real problem with the digital paper stuff right now and with the payment links. And now you're on this third iteration. I guess maybe, I don't think people like it when I get philosophical, but I'm going to do it anyways. You already founded a very successful company. I feel like you probably don't need to work. You definitely don't need to work anymore. Like, what is the why behind like why you're iterating? Like, why are you still here? Why are you building new things and trying to perfect these user experiences? Like, what's driving you?
I think what drives me at the end of the day is when I see opportunities that many people have written off. So they're contrarian opportunities, but if they work out, they'll change the world in a massive and positive way. This is sort of what I saw early with mobile. It's insane that for me to SMS my friend, I got to pay 20 cents every time. And if they're in another country, it's going to cost $2. It's insane that you got to go work with these carriers to try to like build an app and they approve you, they don't approve you. Oh, you can do this, you can't do that. Like, here's an opportunity to like totally change the game for communication, such that anybody, anywhere in the world can message anybody else for free. There can be rapid iteration, product development. We can move into content, group chats, all these different things. Like, that is an insane opportunity to build something amazing for the entire world. And I feel like the opportunity in crypto is the exact same. That's what I found when I first learned about Bitcoin in 2010. I was like, this is an opportunity to do to the financial system what messaging apps did to the SMS system. It's to finally go over the top, make it global, make it inclusive, make it cheap, and make it an environment of rapid innovation and improvement and great consumer experiences. And the cherry on top, most of people think this is impossible. And so I think that's really what drives me.
Do you think a social component is needed for like Kin to be successful? And you've seen Venmo with their payments, they have a little social feed that I don't think it's really done a whole lot for them. But to me, it's like, so you have a background in social at Kick, and that seems like almost the easiest way to like kickstart a network. But I'm curious, do you have social plans in Kin, or like, what are you thinking about social?
It's a great question. I know a ton about chat apps, about social, about messaging. Like, I've explored every branch of the option tree. I'm probably top 5 in the world who explored the chat option tree. And the short answer is we don't know. And the question is, should social be built into an app like Code natively, or should Code enable a bunch of those apps to be built externally? And I think it's a better future if there's a vibrant ecosystem of apps sort of being born, living, growing, and ultimately dying, so that we have this constant innovation, this constant striving to get better. And so, as much as I know chat super well, I'm hopeful that instead of doing it myself and my team doing it ourselves, I'm hoping we can work with developers to empower them, and that I can pass on some of my learnings to them. And there's been some like great examples of this recently. We're starting to see glimmers of interesting web experiences in crypto. Rather than compete with them, build it myself, I'd love to, again, one of our values is work hard to find the win-win under Trustworthy. I would love to work hard with them to find the win-win where they build an amazing experience and they have huge success in the world and they deliver amazing things. But they do it on top of Kin and on top of Code.
I was listening to your podcast back in 2019. That's when Libra, I think, was kind of a big deal, right? And it's like Facebook coming into crypto, and then also just having the stablecoin. You talked about how in some ways it was really exciting. Obviously that failed. Well, became DM, kind of split out, and some of the teams now are building in the space natively. I'm curious, is there any learnings you took away from that? Because I know at the time, like, you were definitely you didn't say that like you thought that was going to take over the world or anything, but you definitely found it exciting. I'm just curious, do you think there was a lesson? Do you think they could come and do that again and the timing was off? or what do you think about like kind of that Libra, centralized but creating a stablecoin project?
It's a great question. Like, I think it's another one of these, what are all the options? Like, could a stablecoin be massively successful? Yes, absolutely. And then it's a question of like, what are the narratives for why it will be a success and what are the narratives for why it won't be a success? I think like the narratives for why it won't be a success is like, if you're going to send me dollars, just send me dollars. Like, we already have pretty good infrastructure for that. And at the same time, the thing that just like really fascinates me, we have this extremely religious industry that's extremely tribal. Stablecoins are not crypto. Like, they are not crypto. It was so interesting when PayPal launched their PayPal stablecoin. There's a little Twitter thread with one of the developers answering a question. And I remember number 5 is like, oh, yes. And of course, we can seize and freeze. He put in quotes, seize and freeze stablecoins at any point, just like any other stablecoin has to. The fact that he put obviously in front of seize and freeze, to me, just shows how far this industry has gotten away from why this all began, what we're trying to build, and instead is just focused on these narratives out of desperation, trying to find any sort of utility for what we've been building.
So while we're on that topic, I am actually curious, and I like asking this question to people. What do you think like crypto uniquely enables? Right, we talked about maybe in the go-to-market question, you need to focus on problems that or solutions that crypto uniquely enables. What are those? Like, do you have any contrarian thoughts on this as well?
I think probably it's 2 things. So the first is the ability to go global. We can add a feature to code today and roll it out to users across almost the entire world tomorrow. Okay, so we can innovate rapidly. That requires code to be self-custodial. And to make a simple self-custodial experience is extremely difficult and has taken years to build. But we've now crossed that threshold. Anybody can use code to exchange digital paper cash. We have proved that we can make self-custodial simple from a mainstream audience. So now we can roll out new features that can be offered to the entire world at once. So I would say that's the first thing. It's the ability to go global. And then the second thing is it's the ability to have minuscule transaction fees. Like, once you get down to these fees that Solana has, you're able to do all sorts of interesting things, like subsidize the entire experience for the user, right? In code, at no point do we say, oh, okay, you have to deposit some funds so you can pay your gas, so you can do this. It's like you've already lost the user, like literally game over, go back to the beginning and try again. So we need to be able to get somebody up and running right away. They can receive money right away. They can give money right away. And that's only possible when you have this fee structure that's so low. And I think that's where Solana is at that intersection of, it is a blockchain, so it is self-custodial, so you can go global, but the fees are cheap enough so you can make self-custodial actually simple. And I think Solana is the only solution I found in the world. I've done a pretty deep dive on the Lightning Network. I've done a pretty deep dive on Ethereum L2s. Like, these are still extremely expensive infrastructures, probably on the order of 1,000 times more expensive than Solana.
Yeah, I saw you tweet about Lightning Network and just saying how there's no way that it would support the users you're hoping to get to. And I think we kind of skipped over this earlier. Like, when you were working on Kick, you had over 100 million users, right? And a lot of those users were using, or in some way, Kin. Is that correct? Or at least Kin points?
A lot of them were using Kick points. Very few of them use Kin.
Yeah. Okay.
Because it was so expensive, so slow, so difficult. And then we ended up selling Kick. We went through the whole SEC battle. It was extremely resource draining. It was extremely damaging from a reputation perspective, et cetera, that we were just like depleting our funds and we just could not afford to run Kick anymore. So we sort of sold it for pennies on the dollar because we felt so strongly about what we were doing on the crypto side.
Yeah. It's a little bit maybe tangential, but I'm curious. You see like Starbucks and Reddit leaning into like NFTs, and well, you have Reddit, I think, doing points with crypto, and then you have Starbucks doing NFTs for royalty programs. And I just feel like you would have quite a bit of overlap in that in some ways, or maybe strong. Do you think we'll see that from more companies like Starbucks? Do you think that's kind of a flash in the pan of people just jumping on the crypto train?
The short answer is I don't know, right? Like,
Yeah.
I have these contrarian views, and sometimes I state them strongly, and people react to that. But I sort of feel that's part of who I am. Like, I like to let people know where I'm at, but also I always acknowledge I'm never 100% certain on anything ever, because I always what are all the options? Is that impossible? No, it's not impossible. The thing I would ask about Starbucks or Reddit points, call it those, why do you need a blockchain? Why do you need a blockchain? Why don't you just use a database? And even furthermore, what value would Starbucks points have if Starbucks were to disappear? Like, so to me, again, it comes back to narrative chasing. Somebody in some foundation for some blockchain somewhere begged somebody at Starbucks to please, please, please do some sort of pilot with us. But it comes back to that question of, well, what problem are you solving for Starbucks? I get how they're solving a problem for you. They're giving you a good narrative. But what problem are you solving for them? And I think we just see so much of that.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm hoping something valuable comes through. I mean, a lot of people talk about, like, wouldn't it be great to take my loyalty points from American Airlines and switch it out for Delta and sell it that way? So, like, maybe I could see like
I'm sure Delta would love that.
An open data
we'll
layer.
give you all the points over here, but spend them over there. That's why they're called loyalty points.
Yeah, no, 100%.
Anyways.
Well, I mean, maybe while we're on the topic of narrative, one thing that I've found interesting so far is how poorly crypto and blockchains have been messaged to mainstream people that just aren't familiar with the concepts. One example of this is, I think there was like a fiasco the other day of something called the Creator League by Mr. Beast. One of these like pro gamers, which is a thing, found out that the Creator League uses like NFTs, and he's like, I cannot support this technology, or something like a political statement almost. What do you think about messaging and like how crypto has been messaged to the mainstream? Like, I mean, obviously we've done it horribly, but do you think that actually matters? Because you said like maybe after that one app, everything will change, which I agree with. But in the meantime, like, how do we get these people to try out, like even the developers to try out blockchain? Like, how can we message better?
Another great question. I don't think the issue is the messaging. I think the issue is the reality. Like, if you look at companies, celebrities, and just your average everyday people, you're either not in crypto or you've been burned by crypto. And so people are right to be skeptical. Can you imagine you were one of the celebrities in the FTX Super Bowl ad? Your friends and family for the rest of time are saying, like, how could you be so stupid? You're never going to go near that thing again. And so to me, it's not about whether crypto is good or bad. There has to be this new experience that's amazing that people love. And then only later do they find out it's powered by crypto. I think that's where it needs to get to. And that's the only way back, is to build products people love that they later go, wow, oh, this is crypto? I didn't realize that. That's interesting. Now I'm intrigued. Like Murr, like I see you a lot on Twitter. Garrett, I know you're super involved, obviously, as well in the industry. You guys are doing amazing stuff. I love this podcast. You guys do a great job. So this is awesome. I'm curious, what's your answer to that question about the positioning? What do you think crypto's doing wrong? What could they do better?
I think two maybe aspects to this question. One is that for regular users and consumers, I don't think it matters that much. It's not on the blockchain to do the messaging. It's on the apps building on top of the blockchain to do the messaging for them, right? Like, if code takes off, then it's because they've done a good job of attracting people with go-to-market, whatnot. What I am interested in is kind of how badly we've messaged it to developers. Obviously, I run a developer company, and blockchains, at the end of the day, the customers are pretty much developers, I would say, and like validators. And so the fact that, like, with blockchains now, you can write like a few lines of code and move millions of dollars around the world at Lightspeed, for example, on Solana, with basically no fees. That's a crazy accomplishment, and you have so much leverage as a developer, which you just did not have before, right? Like, before, you would, I don't know, maybe write some jQuery and, I don't know, add some reactivity to your JavaScript app or something. But now you can do crazy things, and you don't have to worry about DevOps, infra, anything like that. And I'm just very confused how we haven't got the developers to actually understand that. So I actually don't have the answer there either, but that's the part I'm curious about and that I want to really focus on.
Totally. Well, I think you're doing amazing things with Helios, making it simpler for developers. And my advice would be like, we just need to keep going. Like if it's really difficult to build a blockchain based app, then, it's a funnel. Like 1,000 developers come in, 999 get stuck at the technology, and then one launches an app that doesn't go anywhere. Like we need, only 100 to get stuck with the technology. Now we have 900 building apps. Now maybe 10 of those could actually build something compelling. So to me, this is like a funnel question. And we've seen the same thing in like every technology industry that's ever been launched. We just sort of forget. Like I worked on BlackBerry apps. The technology was almost impossible to work with. But then the iPhone came out. It's like, the phone launched and then there were all these apps. No, that's not how it happened. There was 20 years of Nokia and Blackberries before the iPhone came along. And, the web, there's like a similar story there. So I think, it's optimizing that funnel. I think you're doing a huge contribution on that side. And I think we will eventually get there.
To give
thanks. Really appreciate it.
My quick thoughts on it. I think it's a hard question, but I think one, like even this is what we're trying to do in podcasting to some degree, and I'm trying to do on Twitter. Like you have to have people that are zealots in some ways to kickstart an industry, because you have to be a little bit of little crazy, or you're never going to work on something that everyone else is telling you is not going to work. But also, I think a lot of the content out there won't communicate to like the average person, especially who I know. Like, I don't know. Most people like don't want to go bankless, right? Like they may love crypto, and I had like all these friend chat groups spring up when crypto prices were going off, because to them it's like a sports betting. But then if they listen to a crypto podcast and you have someone just being like just hammering on decentralization the whole podcast, or going bankless, or like your bank's going to screw you, I think you immediately lose that person's attention. So I think it's just like having that gradual shift, and that's one thing I like about Solana. They still like keep the ethos of crypto and that you need to be decentralized, but like it's a little bit more practical, a little bit more about speed, and honestly a little bit just more exciting, a little less academic, and most people just don't relate to that. So like I kind of shit on Top Shot back in the day, but now like that was one of the honestly best things that happened to crypto in a mainstream way. So like if that happened again, like I hope it does. Like I don't care if it's on Flow, I just want it to happen again. So like we should enable those things and like kind of support that.
No, I think that's super well said. Like the way to get the mainstream back, because we've lost the mainstream, right? Like they're like, oh, you're in crypto, you're like a Ponzi scheme person. Like, that's the narrative the vast majority of people have in their mind. I think you make a very good point. Like we need those products regardless of where they come from, and we need to celebrate them, because it's only through that celebration that people will see, wait, interesting stuff is actually getting built here, and this stuff might just change the world. Maybe I should pay attention again.
Well said. Well, all right. We've had some really insightful chats. Now I want to do rapid fire. Garrett, unless you have any other final questions?
Let's do it.
No? All right, Ted. Well, I mean, if you've seen the podcast before, you'll know what rapid fire is, but basically I'll just ask you some quick questions. Try to keep your answers short, but if you want to expand, of course, feel free to expand. All right, let's start. So, Ted, what do you think is the most overrated idea in crypto?
Ethereum.
Damn.
Ouch. Ooh, that's going to hurt me.
What do you think is...
But it's okay.
Okay,
it's okay.
Ted, can I ask you though, do you think Ethereum, like ETH, the asset, is the most overrated, or do you think it's like Ethereum scaling through like L2s? Because to me, they're almost two different things.
The whole thing.
The whole thing. Okay.
Yeah. If you want to fast forward to the future, you could just build on Solana today. And I get that I'm going to get a ton of arrows from the religious communities out there that want to attack anybody who questions the doctrine. But like, what are you waiting for? Like, if you want speed, you want scalability, and you want low cost, build on Solana today. Your users aren't going to care that it's sufficiently decentralized instead of more decentralized. Nobody cares. That's not an excuse. Instead, the reason you're building on it today is because you need a narrative for why you haven't found product market fit yet. listen, we just have to build one more L2. And then once we've done that, then we will build the product. It's like, well, why don't you just build the product? So I don't mean that to be offensive. I think the Ethereum community is amazing. And I think Vitalik has done a bunch of stuff. But if we want to move forward, we have to be real with ourselves on what is reality and what is narrative.
Love it. That's an amazing answer. I talk about those things pretty frequently as well, but like you just said it much more concisely and much more, like with gravitas. So appreciate that. Okay, well, what is the most underrated idea in crypto?
I don't know. The word that came to my head was code, honestly. But I guess that's like promoting my own stuff, talking my book. Obviously, it is. But I'm focused on the things that I think crypto needs, and I'm working on the things that I think crypto needs, and that can be amazingly impactful for crypto. And the thing I'm working on is code. And I think, and it's okay, like when we were working on digital paper cash, we don't need the industry to appreciate us to build a mainstream consumer app. Now it's shifting to a platform for web developers. So now we do need to have web developers to be able to actually give this thing a go. But I think people are they look at like code and they look at some other crypto wallet, and somebody who's in crypto goes, well, what's the difference? I'm like, here's the difference. Go try to give $5 to your mom or dad with code and with this other wallet app, and then get them to give $2 back. Then you will see the difference. So I think code is extremely underappreciated today, but I don't say that because we want to be more appreciated. I just think it's underappreciated. So that's the word that came to mind.
Jared, were you going to ask something?
No, I was just thinking through it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, Ted, what is something you've completely changed your mind around in the last year?
That Lightning is not going to work. A year ago, I thought Lightning would work. It was just a matter of time. But as I've gone down the rabbit hole in Lightning, the thing that feels like a fundamental constraint is this idea of having to open up payment channels for all the users if you want to be self-custodial. Yeah, if you want to be custodial, that's fine. But if you want to be custodial, you're not going to be global. So if being self-custodial is a requirement, you need to open up a payment channel for each of your users at a minimum one, but probably more to be truly decentralized, probably many more. Anytime you want to expand a payment channel, the amount of money in it, you got to open up another payment channel. And all those times you do that, it's an L1 transaction on the Bitcoin blockchain. How is that ever going to work? To open up 10 million payment channels, one each for 10 million users, is 10 million transactions at 6 transactions per second. It's like weeks of the entire Bitcoin blockchain capacity. Mm-hmm. So I would say a year ago, I didn't know too much about Lightning, and I was like, yeah, I'm sure it's going to work. Like a bunch of smart people are working on it. But the thing I've changed my mind on is I'm now much more convinced that Lightning is not going to be a solution. But I could be wrong, and maybe I'll put it out there. At me on Twitter and tell me why I'm wrong. I would love to learn more. Because again, it's like, what are all the options? Like if we want self-custodial to go global, ETH L2s seem like not an option. They're 1,000 times more expensive. Bitcoin Lightning seems like not an option. It's 1,000 times, 10,000 times more expensive. Like it just seems like by process of elimination, which is what we always do, Solana is the only option.
What do you fear the most about code?
What do I fear the most about code? My biggest fear is being early, being right, and being punished for it. Like Kik, we built Kik chat app. BlackBerry, the people there, they knew everything we were doing. They thought it was technically impossible, is what I found out later. That's why they encouraged us, because they wanted the music app as well. But then Kik went viral, and they kicked us off their platform. They sued us for patent infringement. and we lost 99% of our users over the next 3 weeks. That was devastating. Kin, new business model, amazing win-win business model between developers and their users. Launched us in the big way. And then the SEC came in and said, yeah, I know there's been thousands of ICOs, but we're going to come after you, Telegram and Facebook. And that was devastating. So I think the thing I don't know, fear, the thing I'm trying to prepare for the most is being like, hopefully we're right. We might not be, but hopefully we're right. But if we are right, how do we set it up so that we're not misunderstood, so that we're not attacked for being first? And, there's sort of 15 years of experience in trying to set it up right this time. A big part of it comes down to using kin as the currency. I found, would Bitcoin be the most valuable cryptocurrency in the world if it was a stablecoin? No, it would have been forgotten by history by now. Having something that can go up in value is extremely aligning to a global group of people to work together to really make something work. And I think that's sort of what we're hoping to achieve, but also prepare for is, again, trying to be early, trying to be right, but this time trying to get past the inevitable attacks that will come.
Talking about aligning people globally, what are your thoughts on DAOs? Yay or nay?
80% nay. I've spent a lot of time, so we launched Kin. There was a Kin Foundation. There was a lot of work on trying to build a decentralized organization to work on it. The problem is, at the end of the day, you can't tell who's human, right? Do I have one account with 1,000 kin or 1,000 accounts with one kin? So you can't tell who's human. So you need to move to stake weighted. But once you move to stake weighted, the whales control everything and everybody else just doesn't care. So you're sort of stuck between totally useless and oligopoly, with nothing in between. I don't see how that gets solved. The answer we came to as the kin community is to say, this isn't working, shut it all down. And so there was a vote held, stake weighted. I did not vote. I own a decent amount of kin, not a crazy amount of kin, but a decent amount of kin, but I didn't vote. There's a lot of participation from the community, and they voted to burn all the kin reserves and shut down the Kin Foundation. And so what's really interesting about Kin, again, giving us more conviction that Kin is the right cryptocurrency to build code with. It's the only cryptocurrency on Solana that has zero inflation, zero foundation, and doesn't even have a website.
So Ted, I'll close it off for Mert. What Mert often asks, he's like, what is your one piece of advice for other founders in the crypto space? Curious what you think.
That could be your question. That doesn't have to be Mert's question.
I'm trying to steal it from him. Actually, I'm waiting for my question.
How about I'll answer that question, but you give me one more question. Your question.
Okay.
You can't preface it with Mert's question. My one piece of advice is, it's tricky. I think it depends. Are you what layer are you building for? I think the advice for somebody like Mert building at the infrastructure layer is different than the advice for somebody like Ted building at the app layer. I think at the app layer, the question is, what problem can you uniquely solve? And being really clear about that. And I think at the infrastructure layer, it's how can we open up the funnel so that for the 1,000 developers we come in, maybe today 21% get through the tech, and then it's 22%, 23%, 24%. What is causing developers to drop off when they go to play with the technology?
That's good insight. We need to think about that on the user side as well. It's like you were talking about spinning up a wallet. How many we had Jeff Morse Jr. on here, and he was talking about at Tinder, they had something in India, this small bug, and it literally made the onboarding process 2 to 3 seconds longer, and their churn rate just skyrocketed. So little things that obviously we can't think about in crypto yet, but we will soon. Ted,
one more question.
One more question. Okay, I got
from
you.
Garrett. I want a Garrett original.
Okay. Well, this is less of a question. Maybe you can see if you have insight. It's just what popped in my head when you were talking about all this. I was with a friend yesterday, and they work at TikTok, and they're exploring with in-app payments or in-app stores almost. Like, you know how Instagram added the storefront into the app, and I've actually used that quite a bit. And you can track conversion within the app itself, and they make it super easy to buy. Like it's all in the app itself. TikTok is doing the same thing, and TikTok's actually not charging any money because similar to what you said, like growing a business, they're not charging any fees. I'm sure that'll change. To me, that just feels like kind of the future of commerce in some way. And it would be amazing, obviously, like if crypto got involved. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that space? Because to me, it's just, I've already started to buy things on Instagram and now it's going to TikTok. It's like these social apps that involve video that are now making it where you can track conversions in app and do payment in one spot. I don't know. I just think that's amazing. And that's something that like I would love for crypto to be a part of.
I think it's amazing. I think the punchline is I think it's amazing. I don't think it's something that crypto can go after in the short term. Like, what is TikTok and Instagram doing? They're bringing distribution to commerce. Hey, it's really hard to get in front of customers. We're going to help you do that. But then when it gets to the checkout aisle and they're like, okay, it's time to pay. Do they want to tap their credit card or do they want to go to an exchange, sign up, KYC, buy some crypto, move it into TikTok and then make the purchase? Like, I think that's one of the challenges is we have all these narratives around how we're going to replace Visa transactions. And it's Peter Thiel's old thing. And there's a lot of wisdom in this. Like, it needs to be 10 times better. People say, well, but the merchant can save 2% on the fees. It's like, no, 10 times better for the customer. Because what's the customer going to say? Oh, yeah, can I pay credit card? Even if there's businesses that are like, oh, we don't take credit card, we only take debit card because we're trying to save the fees. It's like, maybe I'll buy next time then.
Yeah.
Even that, never mind like how much friction there is with crypto. So I think it's super interesting, but I think crypto would be wise to focus on the things that existing payment rails can't do.
Yeah, it's a good answer. Mm-hmm. I feel like too, I'm gonna ramble, but it can be small things. Like we're always looking for the next big thing. And it's like, for example, on Apple, anybody that has an iPhone has like signed up to a service and it's like put in your security code and now it like automatically goes from your text message to going into the field. So you don't have to type in yourself. That to me is a 10 to 100 times improvement. And if like crypto can slide it, right? Like if crypto can slide into things that way, like that's huge. It doesn't have to be some world changing thing at first or, some applications.
Well, that's these companies, right? Like Apple, you mentioned Apple, are machines at improving experiences, right? They are machines, some of the best machines in the world. So it's not what could be better, it's what could they not do? Because if they could do it, they'd probably already do it.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Okay, I'm gonna steal the spotlight. One last question because I was thinking about some bad advice from VCs on Twitter. So Ted, I want to ask you, what is the worst piece of advice you've ever received?
Building a company is hard. You need to hire and then trust people with more experience. I think if you ask any first-time founder who then goes on to start a second or third company, this is probably the worst piece of advice they got. Like, you guys were doing really well. It was going awesome. And then it got hard. And so rather than tell you that, listen, it's hard for everybody, you need to keep going. You need to like believe in what got you this far. The investors get scared as well. And, it's like nobody gets fired for buying IBM. Nobody gets fired for hiring from Apple. But people who are successful in Apple will never be successful in 10, 20, 100-person startups. So I'm not saying don't hire people with experience, but don't give in to this idea that you don't know what you're doing. Make sure is it that you don't know what you're doing or that it's just hard? If you look at the Kick journey, it got really hard many times. And we conflated didn't know what we were doing with it was a hard journey, right? Like, well, you're not making money. We need to hire people who have made money before. And like fast forward to today, none of the chat apps make money today. It wasn't that we didn't know what we were doing. It's that it was just really hard. And I think that like throws off a lot of founders. For me, it threw me off. I lost my confidence. I hired a bunch of people. The company became a complete mess. And I literally had to like do a hard reset. But I come out of that with a bunch of great lessons, a bunch of great stories. And now I get to like build a company with the people I like, working together in the way I like. And it's amazing and super fun. So, in one way it's painful, but on the other side, it's the pain that brings the joy later in life. I don't think we could build what we're building today if I haven't gone through those dark days.
It's a great answer.
Amazing.
I feel like that's a hard one too to answer. Anyways, Ted, thanks so much for joining today. Literally, I think Code is such a cool app. It's one of the coolest apps I've seen in crypto yet. It really is the one app you could probably show your friend and be like, yeah, check this out. This is fun. So thanks again for joining. You had a lot of hot takes. You had some really insightful takes. Would love to have you on again in the future. So thanks for coming on.
Thanks so much, guys.
See you next time.